I was 12 years old the night the bombers flew over our village. Until that evening, war was only a distant rumor carried through static on the radio. It was something that belonged to cities we had never seen, to borders drawn on maps we did not understand. In our small village, surrounded by fields and quiet forests, life still felt untouched. The mornings smelled of damp soil and fresh bread. The nights were filled with crickets and the soft wind brushing against wooden shutters. We believed we were too small to matter. That night began in silence, an unusual silence. Even now, decades later, I remember that silence more clearly than the noise that followed. The air felt heavy, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. My father sat near the stove, adjusting the dial of our old radio, trying to catch a clear signal. My mother moved quietly around the kitchen, her hands working, but her eyes drifting toward the window more often than usual. Something felt wrong. Then we heard it. At first, it sounded like distant thunder rolling far beyond the hills. A low vibration, steady and unnatural. It did not rise and fall like a storm. It grew. My father froze. He did not need to say anything. His expression told us everything. The sound deepened into a roar. The windows began to tremble in their frames. The dishes in the cupboard clinked softly against one another. My heart started pounding, though I did not yet understand why. I moved toward the window before anyone could stop me. And that was when I saw them. Dark shapes cutting across the moonlit clouds. One after another. Large mechanical silhouettes gliding through the night sky. Their engines droned in perfect, terrifying rhythm. There were so many that they seemed endless. They were not birds. They were not thunder. They were bombers. I had seen pictures of them in newspapers, but seeing them above our roof was something else entirely. They looked slow and deliberate, as if they owned the sky. As if nothing beneath them could possibly matter. My father's voice broke through the noise. Downstairs. Now, we had a small basement beneath the house. It was used for storing potatoes during winter and old tools no one wanted to throw away. That night it became our shelter. The roar above us intensified. The ground began to tremble beneath my feet as we descended the narrow wooden steps. My mother held my little sister close. I could feel her shaking. Then we saw it. A sudden flash in the distance, a brief, violent burst of light beyond the fields. A few seconds later, the sound reached us. A deep explosion that seemed to tear through the earth itself. They were not bombing our village. They were passing over us, heading toward the city beyond the river. But from where we sat, huddled in that dim basement, it felt as though the entire world was being ripped apart. Another flash. Another explosion. Dust fell from the ceiling beams. The oil lamp flickered. I covered my ears, but it did not help. The sound was not something you simply heard. It was something you felt in your chest, in your bones. For nearly an hour, the planes continued overhead. Wave after wave. Each time the noise seemed to fade, another formation approached. The sky above us never felt empty. Time stretched strangely in that darkness. I remember staring at the wall, imagining the pilots above us. Did they see the tiny lights in our village? Did they think about the people below? Or were we nothing more than shadows beneath their wings? The explosions in the distance began to blur together. Fear settled into something heavier than panic. It became realization. War was no longer a story on the radio. It was above us. Eventually, the roar began to thin. The tremors softened. The final wave of engines faded into the distance, leaving behind a silence that felt foreign and hollow. No one moved at first. We listened carefully, as if expecting the sound to return at any moment. My father slowly climbed the stairs. We followed him cautiously. The house was still standing. The windows were intact. The lantern still burned on the table. Outside, the sky was dark again, as though nothing had happened. But far on the horizon, beyond the fields, there was a faint red glow. A distant reminder that somewhere not far from us, homes were burning. I stepped outside. The air smelled different. Faint smoke carried on the wind. The village was quiet, but not peacefully quiet. Doors were slightly open. Shadows moved behind curtains. Everyone had heard it. Everyone had felt it. I looked up at the sky again. It seemed impossibly calm now. The same sky that had roared with engines only minutes earlier was empty and silent. It felt wrong that something so violent could pass through and leave no visible scar. That night I did not sleep. I sat near the window and watched the faint glow on the horizon slowly fade. I tried to imagine the city beyond the river, the factories, the streets, the people who had no basement strong enough to shield them. And for the first time in my young life, I understood something deeply unsettling. We were not separate from the war. We were simply next in line. From that night on, every distant engine made my chest tighten. Every storm cloud looked suspicious. The world no longer felt large and protective. It felt exposed. Years later, I would learn about military targets and strategic objectives. I would hear politicians speak of necessary actions and calculated risks. I would read about numbers, how many bombs, how many buildings, how many lives. But none of those numbers captured what it felt like to be 12 years old, standing under a sky filled with machines, realizing that innocence could disappear in a single night. The bombers never dropped their cargo on our village. They did not destroy our home. They did not shatter our windows. But they took something else. They took the quiet certainty that tomorrow would be like yesterday. They took the illusion that small places are invisible. They took the simple comfort of looking at the sky without fear. Sometimes people think war begins when soldiers march into your street. For me, it began when the sky started to roar. And even now, whenever I hear a distant engine in the night, I am 12 years old again, standing at that window, watching dark shapes move across the moon, waiting to see if they will pass. Or if this time they will stay.